My name is Bradley, and you're listening to The Cryptic Creature Show.
So I walked to the end of this deck where the bedroom starts on the cabin. As I got 3/4 of the way across the deck, I look up, and there is something looking in that bedroom window. Whatever it was had its front legs or hands or whatever up to its face, like looking into a window. The hindquarters or haunches, I don't know what you would call them. So I see these big haunches, see this thing looking in my window. It turns, looks at me, and bolts out of there. I then retreated back into the cabin, where I paced around a little bit and asked myself, what just happened?
This is the Cryptid Creature Show. I am Brian, and with me, as always, my co-host Todd. What's up, buddy?
Brian, my friend, we have a great show coming up as always tonight. We got 2 guests coming on. We got a double feature.
Oh, you gotta love those.
Oh, yeah. First, we're going to bring Bill on. And Bill had a Dogman encounter up in the UP of Michigan. Yeah, another Dogman encounter.
Yeah.
And then we're going to bring Hans on, and Hans is going to talk about some strange experiences he's had with orbs, ghosts, and I think maybe some kind of Bigfoot strangeness as well. So,
very cool.
I do not want to waste any time. I want to get these guys on and start talking to them. Are you ready to bring them on?
Yep, let's get them. Hey, Bill, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm good. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Bill, thanks for being here with us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure.
We were talking to you earlier, and you had a what sounded like a Dogman encounter up in Michigan. Can you tell us what year and kind of the area that happened in?
I really can't drill down to what year it was. It's been a few years ago, but not horribly long ago. But I was in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, probably 23 miles west of the Mackinac Bridge, about 2 miles into the woods at our hunting camp when this encounter happened.
Okay. So why don't you just tell us what was going on that day and what you're doing up there and how it led up to your encounter?
Well, it was an odd hunting season because I was actually at deer camp alone that season. I don't know where my 2 hunting partners were at, but they were certainly not at camp that night. So our deer camp is kind of a 3-room cabin. When we first built the thing, it was just a small 1-room cabin, couple bunk beds, dining room table, no kitchen, no nothing really. And then as the years went on and we got a little older, we wanted to have some more creature comforts, no pun intended for the show. And so we added a bedroom and then a bathroom with a big storage room for all of our hunting clothes and equipment and that sort of thing. So that night I was sleeping in my usual bunk bed, woke up, no idea what time it was, middle of the night. And I walked into the main room of the cabin, out the front door. Don't know why I decided to go outside versus use the bathroom. But, you know how hunting camps go sometimes. Walked out onto the deck, and the deck is probably 16 feet by 12 feet, so 16 feet wide. So I walked to the end of this deck, which right at the end of this deck is where the bedroom starts on the cabin. And then there's a pretty large window right there that you can look into or see out of the bedroom. And it's, you know, standard sliding window, nothing fancy, you know, you'd see it in the barn or a deer camp. But as I got 3/4 of the way across the deck, I look up and there is something looking in that bedroom window on 2 legs. Definitely wasn't a human, but at first it almost looked like whatever it was had its front legs or hands or whatever up to its face, like looking into a window. Much like you look into, somebody's house, you cover the light to see in better. So that was the first thing I noticed. The second thing I noticed was the, hindquarters or haunches, I don't know what you would call them, were large. I mean, it was dark, but it was, moonlight, so I could see an outline, and that was about it. So I see these big haunches, see this thing looking in my window. It turns, looks at me, and bolts out of there. And of course, me, I'm probably not as spry as this thing was. I then retreated back into the cabin, where I paced around a little bit and asked myself, what just happened? Because I'm not one that, I've hunted for years. And, of course, the morning in the woods when it's the darkest is a little eerie, but I've never had issues of seeing things, thinking about things, or worrying about stuff like this. And the other thing I remember, that creature, whatever it was, made it from that window to the woods, which is about, I was just up there recently and measured, it's about 60 feet from the cabin across the little lawn to the woods. That thing made it out there in a mere couple of seconds. It was like bounding to the woods. It was, the haunches and the speed this thing went from the window to the woods was just, I couldn't wrap my brain around how fast it was. So, again, like I said, I typically wasn't startled by much. But while I was that night, I went back in the cabin, got in bed thinking, well, I don't have a curtain. So is this thing going to come back? So you know how your brain, sometimes the logic isn't flowing the best when you're startled or having a situation like this. So I thought I'd be much safer if I went and slept on the couch, which of course there's another big window right there. And I was in the virtually the same position as I would have been at my bed. And then the other thing I did that we had never done at hunting camp is I locked the door, because I sure as heck didn't know if this thing was going to come back. But the way it left out of there, it was it definitely didn't want to stick around and have me check it out anymore.
Were you just up there by yourself, you said?
Yeah, I was there by myself, but traditionally we go up, me and one other guy will ride the camp together. And then the third guy, he doesn't hunt. He's more of our cook and that sort of thing, cleanup guy. So for some reason that year, I don't know if we all went separate or if they had gone home and I was staying for Thanksgiving. I just can't, I can't recollect that. And, the funny thing is we keep a log at camp, just the dumb stuff we do, the, deer we harvest, the years we don't harvest any, and talk about the meals. But for some reason, I didn't log that. I certainly wish I would have, because I probably could have recollected and told the story a lot better. But for some reason I didn't, and it's been long enough ago, I can't remember where those guys were. If they'd have been there, they'd have probably thought I was crazy, but like I said, I don't typically see stuff or hear voices or any of that sort of activity. So when this happened to me, I was, certainly taken aback.
So you went back in. What was going through your mind? What were you thinking that you saw?
Well, I'll try to say this and keep my language clean, but I thought I was crazy. I wondered what the hell was going on. And I just wondered what it could have been, because it certainly wasn't a human based on the way it was built. And it wasn't an animal like I had, you would typically see in the woods. Just because I remember that hindquarters just seemed very large, abnormal from a normal dog or a deer. And the other thing I did when I was up there a couple of weeks ago, so I measured how far it is from the cabin to to the woods, and I also measured how high that window is. So I would estimate with this thing on its hindquarters was probably 6 to 7 feet high, because just based on where it would have been on that window. If it was taller than 7 feet, it would have been past the top of the window.
When it looked at you, were you able to see any kind of features or kind of figure out maybe what this thing was at all?
No, I really didn't make out any facial features or, any sort of, shape of the snout or jaws or teeth or any of that. Like I said, it was middle of the night. I'm just kind of wandering out there to go to the bathroom like I've done a million times, and this happens. So I think my mind just went into fight or flight, and obviously I flew out of there. So I didn't really stick around to see a whole lot. Plus, it fled so fast, I don't really know if I'd have seen much.
Did you happen to notice if it had a tail or not?
I didn't notice a tail, and it didn't make any noise when it took off. Like it didn't growl or hiss or, nothing like that. But I could hear its footfalls across the yard and into the woods. And, there's the old joke that when you're hunting for deer, the squirrels make more noise than a deer does. So it certainly wasn't a deer, because this thing moved out of there like it was, it wasn't a small deer hoof hitting the soil. It had more of a distinct, heavier footfall than, an animal that you'd, be hunting.
Yeah, well, you mentioned haunches. So, we talk about things in Michigan, whether Dogman, Bigfoot. Do you think this thing was a Dogman? What's your impression of what you saw?
So I've never been one that's studied Bigfoot, or I've read more on Dogman since this has happened. That's where I would lean, just because of the speed of it, and it seemed like it was built fairly sleek. And maybe I'm just, making some assumptions that a Bigfoot would have been more bulky. But this thing, it definitely moved out of there pretty quick.
So how long have you been hunting up there, Bill? Did you say?
Oh, let's see. So I have been going to the Upper Peninsula since I was 13. So that is, I'm not real good at math here. 43 years I've been going up there. I've been hunting up there for probably 22 years. Prior to that, I was a snowmobiler, ATV guy, did all that sort of stuff. And here in the last few years, I've seen quite a few bears out when we're riding our side-by-side. This thing also didn't move like a bear. It seemed like its haunches were more defined than a bear's, just due to its fur. So I've kind of split my time between ATVs, side-by-sides, and that, of course, hunting deer. I'd usually hunt for 7 to 10 days, depending on if I harvested anything. With the way the deer population's been in the Upper Peninsula, it's been a dry spell for a couple of years.
So before this happened, did you even believe in Bigfoot or anything like that? What was your thoughts about strange cryptids, Bigfoot, things like that?
I would almost say most of my life, I've really not given it much thought. But as I've gotten older, then this happened, and I've read more about Dogman. I've listened to some of your other episodes, and there's certainly more in my realm of belief now than it used to be.
Well, that's good. We appreciate that. We thank you for that, for sure. And hopefully it helps you and other people who've heard this before and been through things that you've been through to understand maybe that there's things out there that people don't know about. You know what I mean?
This is one of the things I didn't really talk about it a whole lot. We would get together at hunting camp, and I would tell the story, and everybody'd laugh and tell me I was crazy. But I'm afraid I'm not. It was certainly something out there. And I could tell the story however many years ago it was, and it still gives me goosebumps.
So I have to ask, after you saw that creature out there and you were attempting to do your business and you went back in, did you end up relieving yourself that night, or did you have to just hold it, or what?
No, because when you have that fight or flight kick in, and the blood rushes to the core of your body, the bladder kind of gets forgotten about. So I was able to hold off for a little bit.
I can imagine. So what happened the next day? What'd you do? Did you go hunting or no?
Yeah, I got up and went about my business, and it was the days after were nondescript, and I can't, I wish I knew where those guys are at, because 9 times out of 10, there's the 3 of us that are there hunting, and it was an odd year. I don't know if this thing had been around and sensed that things were different and there was fewer humans there and thought it would take a peek, but and the way the bedroom is laid out, the thing really wouldn't have been able to see me, because the bedroom's obviously dark and I'm in a bunk bed in a corner with a bed over the top of me, so we wouldn't have seen much. I just don't know what prompted it to happen then, or why it decided to come out that night.
So Bill, all the years before this, and even I guess after this, you're still going up there, obviously. Has there been any inkling of this creature being around again?
No, my friends that live up there, they don't talk about it. They've never seen it. They laugh at me when I tell the story, and I could see it coming across as being comical, but looking back, it's kind of funny with the 2 of us meeting in the dark on the deck like that, and me running away like a schoolgirl. But no, it was definitely a hair-raising experience.
So when you go up there now and you're out in the woods and hunting, do you ever get that weird feeling that maybe this creature's still around? Do you think it was just a once in a kind of happening thing? This thing was passing through, and where the heck was it going? Or how do you put that into concept?
No, I wonder all those things. I wonder if it was just passing through, because I've not heard talk of it from anyone else. But again, I don't talk to a whole lot of people up there. It's the same, half a dozen people. And, I don't, there's no restaurants or bars or anything around where we hunt that, people go and hang out at the watering hole and talk about it. I wish I knew. I wish I knew a whole lot more, but, the years have passed, and I've always been curious. I wish I could have seen it better or flipped on the light. But again, my night vision would have been bad too, since I was in a dark house going on a dark deck.
So seeing what you saw, experiencing what you did, do you believe that this creature was flesh and blood and lives on this earth and hides out in the woods? Do you think it might have been a government experiment, or what's your thoughts about it?
I've never thought of it being a government thing, but I don't think it was. I think this was Mother Nature of some sort that I don't know if I'd say I'm lucky and got to experience it, but it was certainly a memorable situation. I wish I could have had better visibility of it. Would have loved to have seen the face, but the deck is a couple feet off the ground, so I would have been better in line with the face. I don't know why I focused on those haunches.
Well, you're probably in shock for one, trying to figure out what the hell is looking in your window. I mean, that's creepy enough. It's one thing if a person's looking in your window, but if there's something else looking in your window.
No, it's a totally different ballgame. Had it been a human, I've been in law enforcement for 33 years, and, I'd have been certainly ready and apt to handle a peeping Tom, but whatever this was, I was certainly not ready or trained and able to handle that.
Really, I don't think anybody would have been trained to handle something like that. at that point in time.
No, maybe we should figure out something and put on some training for folks so that they have their first experience. They're better suited than I was.
Do you think you'd like to see one again?
I would love to, so that way I could, get some verification in my mind. What I saw was what I saw. If that makes sense, it would just be nice to verify what I think I saw.
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
Do you think that these things are dangerous? Do you worry about other people up there?
I don't worry about it because I would have been easy pickings, and it chose to leave versus engage me. So, that kind of made me think this wasn't dangerous, but it was such a crazy experience. I didn't have the balls to get back in my bed.
I don't blame you. I mean, it's one thing to see something like that just walking around your yard or in the woods, but to be peeking in your window while you're trying to sleep, that may not have been the first time it was doing that. I mean, I hate to tell you that, but it's possible, right?
Well, now I'll never stay there again.
Sorry. I didn't mean to ruin it, but just get a blind. You'll be fine.
No, I definitely see what you're saying. And, it could have been taller than the window. If it was leaning to look in, it could have been, 7 feet-ish high or, 6.5, 7 feet high.
So did you check for any tracks or anything like that? Have you looked for anything like that out there?
No, I didn't. It was just kind of out of my mind. And I just, got up in the morning. It's dark when I went into the woods, so I never really even thought about it. Came out for lunch and, I just kind of put it out of my mind.
So what are you carrying when you hunt up there?
Well, it's a little overkill, but I carry a 300 Win Mag for my deer hunting. And I also, carry a few different handguns, usually a Glock 40, just in case you encounter someone in the woods or something in the woods that's not friendly or thinks you're hunting their spot or in their blind or too close. Sometimes people are a little finicky. So, and being in law enforcement as long as I have, I typically am always armed. So that wasn't anything abnormal. And, I would have had weapons in the house, but I was still, half scared to death.
Yeah, a lot of people that have encountered Dogman have told us that they don't know if there's a gun big enough that can do damage to this thing. Did you think that what you saw was you could have, if you had to shoot or protect yourself, you could have?
Well, with that 300 Win Mag, one round of that would have, I think, certainly stopped the animal or whatever you call them, or scared it away because it's a pretty serious boom. I don't think I could have gotten the rifle up and gotten the scope on it to shoot it just because it was moving that fast. I think you'd have to have a AR or some sort of weapon that's capable of rapid fire with a, optic better for fast sight acquisition.
So, question for you again. Would you have rather seen it like you did, walking on the deck, relieving yourself, and then boom, there it is? Or would you rather seen it from inside, from the window?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think seeing it, if I would have seen it looking in, I think that would have made it worse. I think I would have preferred to have been out there the way it happened versus it looking in the window. Because had it been looking in the window, I would have been more apt to think it was a reflection. It was, who knows, an owl, something. But with this, I was able to see the full length of it.
So did you tell your friends? Anybody about it?
I did. I know certainly told my wife, and we hang around with a couple that, they're definitely people that believe in Bigfoot and they like ghost hunting and, that sort of stuff. And they certainly enjoyed hearing the story. showed up. They showed up here one day and brought me a magnet for my refrigerator with Bigfoot on it. So they've enjoyed razzing me over it for a few years. But I can't remember if I told the hunting guys right away, or if, I just wish I had a better memory of, were they not there yet, or had they left already and I was at camp alone.
I wonder if you're kind of waiting for them to maybe see it out there when they're hunting to come to you and say, did you guys see this thing, this wolf creature out there? Maybe you just didn't want to bring it up, you know what I mean? For embarrassment.
Yeah, the one guy I hunt with, he's also in law enforcement, but I would love for him to see it because, he's one of those guys that super, super nice guy. Everybody loves him. They would say, well, he's not a BS artist. He's not going to make something like this up. Not that I am, but he's just one of those guys that, he can say a lot of things and has I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, no, we believe you, and we appreciate you being here and talking to us about this, and respect you for being in the business you're in and what you do. And these things are real. People are seeing these things, not just in the UP. I mean, Michigan, Wisconsin. We've had reports in Ohio, Florida, even Florida. So, I mean, we're just trying to figure out what this thing is. I always say on the show, I hate werewolves. The movie The Howling's terrified me. And to think that these creatures are real running around out there is unbelievable to me. I'm like, it's just crazy. It really is. I don't know what to think about it.
And, describing it like a werewolf could be accurate if, I'm not huge into the Halloween or scary stuff movies, but just the way the thing was built tends me more to that type of description. So I don't, like, what other physical characteristics are you guys hearing from other encounters?
Well, for one, I'll say this. Where did the concept of the werewolf come from? Was that just pulled out of somebody's brain, or were these people seeing this back in Europe, back in the who knows when, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly.
But most of the reports we hear, so these things are like 7.5, 8 feet tall. They have raccoon kind of hands, big raccoon, creepy hands. Mm-hmm. Did you notice the hands on this thing when it was looking in the window?
I didn't notice the detail, but I knew they were big enough to cover the face to look in, or the eyes.
Okay. So they weren't paws.
No, they were definitely more hands.
So, I mean, everything you'd imagine a werewolf to be. A lot of people have said it looks like the one on Van Helsing, the movie Van Helsing, if you've ever watched that.
I have not.
Toward the end, the black werewolf there. And we've talked to a couple guys. We've talked to a gentleman who've actually shot one and killed one. Him and his brother were hunting. I think it's episode 143. I can't remember exactly.
Okay.
But these guys were hunting in Ohio, and one charged his brother shot this thing, and he ended up shooting it once in the shoulder. He got a lucky shot and hit it in the temple and dropped it. And weird things happened after that. They called DNR. Then everybody else showed up, black Tahoes. Everything got weird, and next thing you know, it was gone. So if they are out there and they are real and they're not created by the government, I think the government knows about them. I think that they know about Bigfoot as well. But it just scares me to know that if these creatures are out there, and I mean, you wouldn't want, you saw what you saw. Would you want to be trekking out in the woods with this thing out there, or your family out there, or anybody that you knew out there? I mean,
no, I certainly wouldn't want them out there without me, or me out there without a firearm.
Hopefully they're not dangerous, but you don't know.
No, you don't. And this one certainly didn't stick around, but it traveled that 60 feet and made a ruckus in the woods. It was in a couple blinks of the eye. So it seemed like it had a pretty good stride on it.
It could have been a young one too. You never know.
Yeah, it could be.
Have you ever thought about have you put security cameras out there?
We haven't, just because you would get a bunch of pictures of pickup trucks coming and going, and people going out on the deck and having a beer or two. And so it's, when we're not there, people still, drive back there and, mess around. So haven't really thought about it. Probably not a horrible idea. I keep a camera. So we have since bought a place up there, and I keep a camera out there, but usually all I catch there is the neighbor kids.
Well, Bill, we want to thank you for being here tonight, talking about your encounter and seeing that Dogman creepily staring in your window. I don't know how you would deal with that.
Yeah. I wouldn't have been sleeping that night, I'll tell you that.
I'm not sure I did very much, but it was great to be able to share the story with you guys. It was, when I heard you were actually interested in what I had experienced, most people look at it like it's a campfire story, but I appreciate you guys genuinely having an interest in it.
Oh, yeah. We believe you.
Absolutely. And we're glad you could get it off your chest to us and talk to us about it. And hopefully it makes you feel better and understand a little bit better and, everything. So moving forward, maybe, run into something else and you can get a hold of us and talk about that too. Or maybe you don't want to.
If something else happens while you're up there, let us know.
I will certainly do that. I would certainly love for it to happen again, because I'll hopefully be better prepared to either flip on my cell phone or at least a flashlight.
Bill, it was great talking to you again, and we thank you for being here with us and spending the time tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, man, that was awesome having Bill on. Can you imagine walking outside that cabin and,
seeing that? No.
Seeing that, and then going back inside. How many times do you think that thing was looking through his window? Honestly.
I don't know. But probably I'm sure it wasn't the first time.
And he still goes back up there. The thing that creeps me out is he goes back in the woods the next morning to go hunting.
Yeah. I would have waited till noon.
I would have not went back. I think I would have left.
Would
But
you?
obviously he felt confident. The guy's been in
I guess. Yeah.
police force for a long time. So, and he had hopefully the weapons to do so. So, but like you said, he's not sure. So.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, this Dogman thing, I don't know what to think about it. All right, we're going to bring Hans on next and talk about his crazy experiences he's had with different kind of things going on in his life. So, are you ready to bring Hans on?
Yep, let's get him. Hans, how you doing?
Hans, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here with us tonight.
TMB, what's going on?
Hey, just hanging out, taking
care of business.
Talking about cryptid stuff. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
So you grew up in the Pacific Northwest, is that right?
That's correct. Tacoma, Washington.
Okay. Are you still in that area?
Yes, I live in Seattle now.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
We've been talking a little bit, and you said that you had a number of encounters with different entities, including orbs, ghosts, and Sasquatch. What was the first thing that you ever ran into?
It was the orbs. I think in my email I titled them Orbs in the Gulch. When we were kids in Tacoma, we were playing the gulches all around our neighborhood in the north end, and we had one particular place we liked to go. My buddy Nick and I would go hang out when we were about 12 years old and on up, and then it became kind of a little party spot at times as well as we got older. So in 1976 in September, we went there with some high school friends, and we had managed to procure a case of Rainier beer, which was quite the opportunity for us at the time. We had some girls with us, which made it even more spectacular, just to have somebody besides just a bunch of guys hanging out. So we went to the Gulch, to one of our camps that Nick and I had there, and we were just sitting down, hanging out. We hadn't even started, quote, partying. We were just chatting, and we see these lights. Nick and I see these lights coming down the bottom of the Gulch. There was one main path that ran along the bottom of the Gulch, and it was about 50 yards down the side to the bottom of the Gulch. And we see these three lights coming down. We assumed they were flashlights, but what was really odd about these lights is there was no bobbing up and down like you would have with people carrying them normally. And this is back in the 70s, so the light coming from these lights was different as well. It wasn't like a normal D battery flashlight type light. It was more of a bluish tint to them, and they were about softball size. So we knew something was up right away. Nick and I knew, so we thought, oh, we'll go down and check it out. Why not? It's a lark, if nothing else. So we trucked down the hill, Nick and I. We knew our way around the gulch pretty well, so we had some idea where we're going, where the other people wouldn't have known. So they stayed back, and we got to the bottom, and the lights just kind of went off in 3 different directions. 2 of them went straight up the hill on either side, and these are very steep hills through thick underbrush. Don't see how no sound is being made, like someone's crashing through the brush. And then one went behind a log off the side of the main trail. So I went over to the log to check it out, and when I looked behind it, there was nothing there. So it was just a real head scratcher. I wouldn't say, it wasn't a life-changing event by any means, but it was just something that was very unique. We had never experienced before or since, and I didn't really think much of it until I started listening to cryptid podcasts during COVID, where I picked up about a lot of people talking about orbs and what, the experiences they've had and what the possible meanings are, what they could possibly be. And then it struck me, it's like, wow, the stuff they're describing is a lot like what happened to us back in 1976. So I just thought I'd relay that experience, but it made a real connection for me once I got feedback from various podcasts about orbs, and that they are a thing. They're not just, this wasn't a random happening. So I thought it was worth noting and wanted to share it with you guys.
Yeah, definitely, man. We'll go into the next thing that you had experienced.
Well, that would be the ghost in Denver, as I titled it. We moved to Denver with our young family in 1992, and our daughter was a year old when we got there, and then our second daughter was born while we were there about a year and a half later. About 6 months into our living there, we started hearing noises in the house. It's an older home. It's in the Capital District of downtown Denver, so it's a historic kind of district. So our house was built in 1904, older home, 2-story home. And we'd all be downstairs in the living room, say, and we'd hear something walking across upstairs, and you knew distinctly what that sound was when someone was upstairs walking, because the floorboards were creaking, literally, and you knew the sound. So we would hear this randomly, daytime, nighttime, whatever, but pretty much on a regular basis. And, it didn't bother us. There was no ill intent, so to speak, and no negative association with it. It was just interesting. It's curious what was going on there. And then one night we went to a Rockies game, and this was like the first year that I think they were in the league, so they were playing down at Mile High Stadium still, and there's a big thunderstorm that they had to cancel the game after it started raining because of lightning and the metal stands and all that stuff. So we had to go home. We got home. There was a power outage in the city for a while. So by the time we got home, our house, our neighborhood was pitch black, pitch dark. And when the babysitter we had was from across the street, his name was Graham, and he was about 14 years old or so. And we walked in the door, and he was sitting on our couch in the dark, and he just looked at us. He goes, "Your house is haunted." And he just bolted across the street back to his house, back to home. And at that point, he was kind of like, okay, there's some confirmation there, because we knew exactly what he was talking about. He never elaborated on it, and we didn't press him because we kind of knew what he was talking about. And then the last part of that little adventure in Denver was, I was sleeping. I woke up at 3 a.m. I just looked down the end of the bed, and there was a figure of a woman at the foot of the bed looking down on my wife and I as we were in bed. And she was in a white gown, kind of longish, dark hair, but I couldn't make out any facial features necessarily, but definitely a figure standing there. And then she turned and just slowly dissipated walking down the hallway. My wife also saw this same figure later on at another instance. So again, that was corroborated and verified somewhat. And none of these experiences were negative. We didn't freak out about it at all. It was all, the spirit seemed to be a benign one, which we were thankful for. And, we just all are basically got along, cohabitated. So.
Well, that's just too crazy for me. I don't know if I could even deal with that.
What, with the ghost?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's, you just kind of, I grew up in an older home. I mean, you kind of hear sounds. It just didn't seem that extraordinary. It was kind of cool. To be honest, it became kind of a little bragging point for us to a certain degree, and maybe people think we're crazy because of it, but we didn't feel any judgment. But it was always a fun story to tell.
Talk about your Bigfoot encounter that you had.
Right. So this one definitely falls into the woo category of a Bigfoot experience. I've listened to a ton of your guys' podcasts, like 3/4 of them at least. So, I got a taste for what you guys do. I really enjoy it. I like your format. I like your approach. I think you take just a very even-handed, cool approach with your guests, and I've learned a lot. So, the whole aspect of Sasquatch that I see doesn't seem to be getting explored that much is the woo aspect. In fact, it gets discounted from my experience listening to other podcasts, and even some professional or scientific guests you've had on your show, where they just say, "Oh, it's a flesh and blood creature." Well, I think it's more than that. I mean, I know it's more than that based on my experience, but I didn't even know what I'd experienced again until I'd listened to podcasts that described exactly what happened to me, and guests that described what happened was just what I had experienced. So then the light went on in my head, and I'm like, well, I'm going to share my experience because this was so real. It was visceral. It was as though I was touching a Sasquatch, in my opinion. And I guess in a certain respect, I feel I was. But just to go over the actual incident, this was back in 2006, and we were camping at North Cascades National Park, which is basically in the foothills of the Cascades, the North Cascades. Beautiful area, very remote, and the campgrounds there are just spectacular, and all the hiking you can do and fishing and what have you. So just a really beautiful, rugged area. We were doing the old car camping there. We had a camp group campsite with about 4 or 5 families. We did it every year in the first week of August. We'd pick a different campsite. This was the one we picked that particular year. We were just hanging out at the camp one night, and we were telling stories and sharing jokes and what have you. And everybody's just kind of going to bed. I actually tended to be the fire tender. I enjoyed working with the fire and keeping it going, and then making sure it went out at night. So that kind of made that my responsibility when we were camping, and overseeing that aspect to make sure everything was under control. So I was one of the last ones at the fire. This other fellow, Ed, was with me, and we're just chatting, watching the coals die down. And finally, about 10:30, I said, "Well, I'm turning in." He's like, "Yeah, me too." So we went our separate ways to our tents, and I was probably 15 feet away from my tent. I mean, I knew where the tent was, and all of a sudden, it went black. Literally, it's like a black veil came down from the sky and surrounded me, and I could not see. And when I couldn't see, I kind of started to panic, like, so what exactly is going on? Where am I? What is happening? Am I having a stroke? What is the deal here? It was totally foreign, nothing I'd ever come close to experiencing before. And also, then I started to feel this like dread, like, what is happening? I couldn't explain it. So as I'm standing there, I know exactly where the tent should be as I'm positioned, but I couldn't see it. And this image came up in front of my face, in my mind's eye, that there was a Sasquatch literally standing in front of me, and that I had this overwhelming feeling that if I stretched my arm out, 3 feet in front of me, I would be touching one. And he was right there, and he was projecting this image to me. I was frozen. I couldn't move. I my wife and kids are sleeping, and I can't get to them. So it was really a trippy, disorienting experience. And then just like just as it had come over me, it also went away. It just slowly, things started to dissipate, and then the ambient light and everything came back, and there was the tent literally 6 feet away from me, and I just crawled into the tent. And the whole thing shook me at the time. It shook me for a while afterwards. I didn't talk about it a whole lot because how do you explain that? And I'd never heard of getting zapped by a Sasquatch before at that point in my life. I had no idea what the experience was about. So I just kept quiet about it. I told my wife about it, but other than that, I didn't want to tell anyone because, people give you looks and you start to think, what are you on about? So I kept quiet about it. But once I started hearing of it from your podcast and others about getting zapped, I was like, that's exactly what happened to me. Very clearly what happened to me. And the whole woo aspect of Sasquatch is just, it kind of became just as important to me as the actual proof of the physical creature itself at this point. So that's kind of my little mini crusade of my own, is to investigate or look into the woo aspect of Sasquatch, because I believe that's a trait for sure. Now, whether every Sasquatch has it, I can't say, but definitely there's something going on out there beyond just the physical.
Well, what do you think Bigfoot or Sasquatch it is? Do you think it is a supernatural creature? Do you think it comes from outer space? Do you think why do you think it has, if it has those traits of cloaking and
I think it's a creature that's...
What's your definition, I guess?
Sasquatch, like other creatures, I think is on a spectrum or a range of species. One size doesn't fit all here. I hearken back to when you had an interview with Ron Moorhead, I believe his name is. He talked about quantum Sasquatch. That was really interesting in the whole dimensional aspect. And he really put it plainly, there are however many dimensions there are. Let's say there's 7. We don't know. There may be more. But we only deal in 3, really. So that's 4 other levels that we're not even scratching the surface on. So that really struck me as something that you made the portal argument or the portal possibility real to me. I think this creature is maybe on a spectrum of very physical, straight up physical to interdimensional. I'm not going to say supernatural. I think that's putting a little bit too much to it. I think if you can go through dimensions, that's enough for me. That's I don't think they're Nephilim. I don't think there's a biblical base to them. I think they've just been around for a long time. But that's as far as I go with that. I really think that Sasquatch as a creature is on a spectrum or a range of abilities and states, quite frankly. I think there's different kinds, different types, as I've heard described by some of your guests, and also what I've read and researched on my own. So I really think you can't pigeonhole it into one thing. I think there's a number of them, different types of them, and they have different abilities, all the way from just being very physical and living in the world to being able to enter our dimension in and out through portals. I believe that.
Yeah, Hans, that's very possible. Nobody knows.
I was going to say, like a lot of things in life, it's just, there are no absolutes. There's often a lot of shades of gray, and I think fits for Sasquatch as well. Their abilities and their physical capabilities and their mental and psychic capabilities, for that matter.
And I've said it, many times on the show, that all anybody has is theories and pretty much guesswork, basically, because until somebody can actually sit down with a Bigfoot and learn about it, we're never going to know anything. It's all hearsay and theory, and that's all we have.
Yeah, and what I find frustrating is how do you learn more though? How do you get closer to the bottom of the issue? How do you, or really figuring out what it's all about? That's what's kind of mind-boggling and frustrating at the same time.
Keep getting out of the woods, keep doing what you're doing, and hopefully one of them.
Exactly. Well, to that end, my wife and I are going to Vancouver Island next month for our anniversary, and so we're going to go to a few different spots on the west coast of Vancouver Island, and we're going to do get out there and do a little squatching. I think because we'll be in some pretty remote areas, and I'm looking forward to that.
We've talked about Vancouver Island many times. Let us know how it goes up there.
Vancouver Island.
I've heard that.
Huge area for Bigfoot.
Absolutely. I may have mentioned it in my email to you, but I grew up with Sasquatch, but just growing up in Tacoma in Pierce County. If you look at the BFRO website, Washington State has the most sightings by number, 722 or something like that. And of those 722, Pierce County, which is where Tacoma's located, has the most in Washington State at 84. So, I'm a kid. I'm at 10 years old. I had no idea we were in the hotbed of Bigfoot country, but sure enough, we were. And the Tacoma News Tribune, when I was 11 years old, there was a spate of sightings and incidents around Puyallup, just outside home, and that's very kind of rural farm country. And the Tribune treated it like regular news. They didn't make it spoof it, or they just covered it straight up. And it was really interesting. Instead of making it like a feature story, it was an actual news story, and they treated it that way. And it was really caught my attention when I was a kid. And then I read one of John Green's books, and so I was kind of into it when I was little. But then you drift away. Life gets in the way, and you start raising a family and what have you, and things change. But I came back to it, with COVID and went on, I had a chance to kind of focus on some different stuff, and that Bigfoot was one of them. So, yeah, I'm definitely interested in pursuing it further.
And you're in the perfect area. Where you're at, you can just shoot over to the Olympic Peninsula and get out there and do some investigation.
Yep.
So if you see anything or hear anything or know of anything, you got to reach back out.
Yeah,
to us.
last year I went to Quinault Beach Resort, which is Ocean Shores, Washington, and went to the Sasquatch Summit, and I met the folks from the Olympic Research Project over there, and some members of Todd Standing's team as well. And that was interesting. That was the first time I'd gone to a.
Who did you meet? Who else did you meet?
Sasquatch conference.
Do you remember who else you met over there?
Just that you've talked to the guy from the Olympic Research Project.
We talked to
his name escapes me right now, but it's the main. Yeah, it was one of the main guys. He gave me the rundown on what they're doing and what they're all about, which is really interesting. And then the Todd Standing folks, I really don't remember. They weren't. I know it wasn't him, so I just, we were just chatting.
Cool.
In between speakers and what have you.
Right.
So.
Nice.
All right. Well, Hans, again.
Yeah. So I'm going to keep at it. Yeah. Just one other thing. I really do love the Dogman content you guys have been putting together too. I think that's a cool topic, and
that seems to be
crazy and mysterious.
More and more popular.
It's so cool.
So.
Yeah.
Who would have thunk?
That was only supposed to be in movies when I was a kid, Hans. But you wonder where that culture comes from and why they started making those movies. So it all kind of goes back to that old school stuff where, where did these... who thought of this idea? Was it a thought, or were people really singing these things? And apparently they were.
Right. And I'm sure you guys have probably looked at a little bit on researched it a little bit, but there's been a lot of over the centuries, a lot of dog human type creatures that have supposedly interacted with other civilizations, and were actual tribes or what have you that were part of our culture. So, where does that come from? I mean, there's got to be a grain of truth, I guess. And just, Egyptology and all that with what's his face, the dog guy, not Osiris, but the other one,
Anubis.
Anyway, doesn't matter. Anubis, thank you so much. Yeah. That's the guy. Where does all this come from? So it's really interesting. But
It is.
anyway, I just wanted to mention that's really cool that you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
are
We
doing
appreciate
that.
it.
Well, we got more coming, just so you know. Unfortunately,
Oh, yeah.
we got more Dogman shows.
And
coming, so-
I'm just curious.
What's that, bud?
Good. And I'm just gonna, throw myself out there. I recently retired about a year ago, and
Good for you.
I don't know if you guys. Yeah, thanks. And my wife is retiring at the end of November, so we're both going to be retired at that point. But I just, if you guys want any help, like volunteer help for doing research on stuff, or chasing down some leads or whatever you want, if you just need an extra set of hands, I'd be glad to help you out. If you have any interest, if you need any help, you just let me know, because I'd be glad to.
The coolest thing you could do is
help
just
out
send
where
us
I can.
content, things you hear, your respect for cryptids and investigating like we want to do is greatly appreciated. Anything you guys can send us is awesome. So yeah.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
All right. Hopefully, I'll come back with something from Vancouver Island I could send your way as well.
Definitely,
when we get
Hans.
back
Definitely,
from the trip.
Yeah, letting us know what happens either way. I mean, we'll, shoot us an
Okay.
email or reach out to us
Okay.
one way or the other. So
All right.
All
Yeah,
right.
I will do that.
be safe out there too.
All right, Hans, we appreciate you.
Thanks, buddy.
All right. Thanks. Take care.
All right, man. It was really cool having Hans on, having Bill on, and talking about those different kind of spectrums. You got the Dogman, you got the orbs, you got the Bigfoot, you got the ghosts. Everything's going on. I mean, there's a different world out there. People have to understand there's different things going on out there. This is not just made up. People are not talking about this just to talk about it. There's nothing for them to gain. So
Yeah. Have you noticed? This stuff is happening more frequently now. I don't know if it's because, like we said before, we're all getting outside more and we're encroaching more on their property, their habitats, or something's coming.
one of the two. I don't know which. I guess
I guess we'll find out.
we'll find out when it happens, right? But anyway, it was great having those guys on, talking to them. Listeners, we appreciate you guys for being here. As always,
Always. We love you guys.
thanks for being with us. If it wasn't for you, we would not be here. So
That's right.
appreciate you guys all. Brian, my friend, you're awesome. Thanks for
Yep.
being here with
Always.
me.
Always fun, man. Always learning.
All right, you ready to get out of here?
Yep. See ya.